El 7 de enero de 1948, Thomas Mantell, un capitán norteamericano que se encontraba prestando labores para la Guardia Nacional Aérea del estado de Kentucky, le fue ordenado salir a perseguir un extraño objeto desconocido que había sido reportado por locales y militares merodeando por la región. Mantell, de entonces 26 años y que había tenido una labor destacada durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, se decidió dar caza al objeto acompañado por 3 pilotos de su escuadrón. Por radio, Mantell describió el objeto como de dimensiones gigantes, de apariencia metálica y que portaba una luz roja. También dijo que el objeto estaba realizando hazañas inusuales en cuanto a vuelo, desconcertando a todo el equipo. Lo cierto es que luego el objeto comenzó a ascender en forma indiscriminada y Mantell decidió seguir su aventura solo, dando de baja a su propio escuadrón y a pesar de que él mismo parecía no llevar máscara de oxígeno. Se dice que el objeto ascendió desde 15.000 hasta 30.000 pies, ¿no? Y según varios historiadores, pero lo cierto es que, Mantell no pudo continuar con su vuelo y terminó estrellándose. Algunos hablan de que el objeto había dirigido un rayo en contra de su propio avión, otros dicen que también Mantell reportó ciertas figuras dentro del objeto. Hay muchas versiones, pero lo cierto es que los militares norteamericanos consideraron el caso rápidamente cerrado, diciendo que Mantell en realidad había sido imprudente en perseguir al objeto, al que describieron como una mala observación de Venus. Actualmente, la familia de Mantell reclama justicia con respecto al expediente del capitán y dicen que el gobierno norteamericano nunca les ha dado una respuesta certera con respecto a lo ocurrido. Hoy en Enigma traemos este caso fascinante con una entrevista que los va a sorprender.
Hola y bienvenidos a Enigma, a un programa especial porque en este caso tenemos una entrevista histórica para el mundo hispanohablante porque tenemos con nosotros al nieto de Thomas Mantell, Terry Mantell. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Nos va a dejar que le entrevistemos, la entrevista va a ser en inglés y como siempre os pondré los subtítulos aquí abajo. So, first question, Débora, ¿qué le querías preguntar?
Le quiero preguntar que nos cuente un poco su historia, ¿no? ¿Quién es Terry Mantell?
Okay, yeah, so again, I'm Terry Michael Mantell. I'm the grandson of Captain Thomas Mantell Jr. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, born and raised. Did live in California for a bit in Kansas City, but I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
All right, now my question would be, how has the legacy of your grandfather influenced your life and that of your family as well?
Well, it's been a big influence. It's strange, and I can go back and tell the whole story from the get-go, but the influence has always been there. It's something that the family has always looked for answers, wanting answers. We've got some answers, been on a lot of podcasts and interviews, and the Discovery Channel came out with a in-depth story on it as well. So the influence is big when you're considering you're dealing with a distinguished Flying Cross Award winner from World War II that flew on D-Day and came back and joined the Kentucky Air National Guard and was in a P-51, which was the best plane, one of the best planes ever made. And he died at 25 years old. So it's been a big influence. My dad never knew his dad. My dad was only almost 2 years old at the time. So it's been the butterfly effect, the ripples in history. It's affected many people.
Quería preguntarle por qué Terry se interesó en la historia de su abuelo, que lo llevó a querer saber qué pasó en esa fecha de 1948.
Okay, yeah. Well, for one, he's the first person, especially military person, that was involved in a martyr or loss of life in a UFO case. And then just based on his history and what he accomplished and him being my grandfather and being so connected as far as one step above my dad, I've always been intrigued with it. One, about his military background, and then two, just the story itself. And it's only grown with the likes of Google, and especially recently in the United States with all the UFO hearings and reports, and it's way more mainstream now, and it's an important story that does not need to die.
When did you first learn about the incident of your grandfather's?
I first heard about it when I was young. I don't know if I was 5 or 6, or it was one of those things where I'm sure my dad told us what happened at the time. You you think, wow, did this really happen? You tell people about it, and back in those days, people would look at you a little more like you're crazy. So it really wasn't something that we talked about a lot outside of our home, and even then, we didn't really talk about it a whole lot in our home because it's a grand story. It's worldwide story, but at the end of the day, my grandmother lost her husband, my dad lost his dad, so there was a lot of hurt that the family really did not speak a lot about it, although they always tried to get answers.
Ah, ok. Sí, su abuelo tenía un currículum muy impresionante, ¿no? Que había estado en la Segunda Guerra Mundial participando del día D, había estado en la RAF británica, tenía condecoración como la Cruz del Vuelo Distinguido. Bueno, era un hombre impresionante en ese sentido, que después es reclutado por el gobierno para trabajar con ellos, ¿no? De alguna manera, si es así la biografía de ese.
Correct. Yeah, I can tell more about it. So yes, he participated in the European campaign in World War II. He flew on D-Day. He also flew in a mission called Market Garden. I believe it was Garden. And he was too tall. I'm 6'6". My grandfather, I believe, was like 6'2". He was too tall to fly the fighter planes in World War II. So he flew this big C-47 plane that would go over behind enemy lines, and he would tow a glider underneath his plane, and he would release the glider, and it would just kind of glide down with our troops on it behind enemy lines, where he got hit with a lot of anti-air flak, and his plane was completely destroyed. If you haven't seen the picture of it, I'd highly recommend seeing it. I was actually in an interview done by The Sun, and they posted a picture of it. But he stayed the course. He could have released the glider, put all those men in jeopardy, but he made the mark and made it back to base. And so he did get awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, which those aren't just handed out. It's very, very unique, and you should be proud if you get a Distinguished Flying Cross award from the military.
Claro, y solo tenía 25 años, por eso es muy, muy impresionante todo el currículum de su abuelo.
It is really impressive to us because, as far as we understand, he was only 25 years old. Was he?
When he died, he was 25.
Okay.
So this all happened in 45, 44. So you're talking him being 22, 23 years old, because he died January 7th, 1948. So, yeah, he accomplished a lot at a young age.
Yo quería preguntarle dónde estaba su abuelo exactamente el 1 de julio de 1948, en qué base, cómo fue todo, cómo sucedió el avistamiento, cómo fue el incidente, qué recuerdos tiene o qué ha llegado a saber de todo eso.
Okay, so on January 7th, 1948, he was down in Marietta, Georgia. He was leading back a squadron of P-51s, just a little practice routine mission. Well, that day, all across Kentucky, there were reports of someone seeing something, people were seeing something in the air, and the police station all around Kentucky got overran with calls. So they called Fort Knox, which everyone should know what Fort Knox is. It's and the military base was out there by Fort Knox. Godman Field is where it is in Kentucky. They picked up on it. They went out and looked. They didn't know what it was. They radioed him and told him to take a look of it to see if he could see anything. So he, being in military, when you're told to do something, you do it without asking questions. And that's what he did. And he did see something. He started pursuing it, engaging it. He did radio back in saying it was large and metallic. He did. And there was always a question of why did the wingman leave him? Because if you watch Top Gun or any of these movies, you never leave your wingman. But what he did was he requested hot guns, which hot guns is a military term to load the P-51 up with weapons, bullets. So the fleet left while he stayed in pursuit, and they was getting equipped for hot guns. And hot guns wasn't something that he could just order and it'd be done. He had to request it, and his higher CO, commanding officer, had to approve it. Again, they was at the base. There was generals involved. They looked at it. They didn't see it. So he chased this. I believe he chased it for about 20 or 45 minutes. The last words were, he's in pursuit and he's going in for a closer look. And that was it. Once the plane went down, it crashed in southern Kentucky. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. It crashed in Franklin, Kentucky, which is just on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. Interesting fact on that was the only 2 days he's ever spent in Franklin, Kentucky was the day he was born and the day he died. So, and then once the plane went down, the red tape came out. Everybody, from what I was told, that was involved were basically said, you're not going to talk about the incident. What you are going to talk about is what we're going to tell you to say. And people were pretty much dispersed across and around the country. And that's where the reports came in of, at first they said he was flying the sun, Venus. Then the one that really stuck was the skyhook weather balloon. Again, with the weather balloon theory, they released weather balloons on military bases. All the guys in that tower, him himself, have been on military bases. I think they would know what a balloon was.
All right, and in your opinion, what motivated your grandfather to pursue the UFO?
Well, one, again, he was told to. Again, he's military background in D-Day. You know, he was told.
No, but I mean to stay when the wingman left.
Well, for one, I think the greatest is that he felt there was a threat over American soil. That's never happened before in the history, and I don't think it has since. He felt that whatever he was pursuing, and again, I like to bring in the family aspect. And you had my grandmother who was young with 2 boys at the time. I have 2 daughters myself, and I wouldn't just risk my life just to risk my life. So he felt like it was a threat to the U.S.
Preguntarle cómo era el objeto, porque hay diferentes versiones, ¿no? Si era realmente tan grande como dicen, de qué forma era, ¿no? Cómo se describe, y bueno, eso en principio.
Yeah, from what I'm told, that it was metallic looking, round, circular, round, and large.
Okay, not a cone, because I've read it had a cone shape.
There was reports that it was a cone. Again, the reports are so. There was a colonel or a Quentin Blackwell. Quentin Blackwell was the control tower, in charge of the control tower that day. And the TV show Sightings, it's on YouTube. They did the one episode. This is back in the late 90s. They did an episode about my grandfather. Once this Blackwell's son saw the show, he said, you should get with the family. You know, you want to tell them what you saw. So then they did a follow-up show. And at the time my dad was living, Thomas Mantell's sister was living, and my other uncle who was living, they've all have since passed, flew out to Oklahoma. And this Quentin Blackwell, who was in the tower, is the one that told us about the military hot guns, that said that they all saw it, and they all said it was a saucer.
Same thing regarding the green fog. That's been mentioned as well, right?
The green fog? I had not heard of the green fog myself.
Y quería preguntarle a Terry quiénes más lo vieron, ¿no? Porque tengo entendido que ya como un tiempo antes de enviar el escuadrón, ya como media hora antes ya lo estaban contemplando por ¿no? Los militares ya lo sabían, si eso es así, si el objeto ya estuvo mucho tiempo antes de mandar el escuadrón.
Well, I think the military got involved when the calls started coming in on that day at Godman Field in Kentucky, at Fort Knox. So they got involved again. They saw it, and then that's when they reported, or they instructed my grandfather to chase it or see what it is, inspect it. What is it? You know, there's been a lot of stories out there that the body was missing, that it was never recovered. that there was reports, and I can't confirm or not confirm, but he said that he saw an observation deck window on this thing with people in it. Again, I don't know if that's true or not true. Blackwell didn't mention that to my family. Now, his plane crashed. That they said what happened was he was chasing a weather balloon. The weather balloon was thousands of feet in the air. He was not equipped with oxygen that day because he was just doing a routine mission trip from Marietta, Georgia, so they staying below level of where they needed oxygen. So they said that he chased this thing, and what he was chasing was a weather balloon. He went too high up and passed out and crashed. Now, Blackwell said that he had talked to many people that has suffered from lack of oxygen while flying. And he said the whole time he was talking to Thomas Mantell that he was incoherent the whole time. The sightings show we actually, and I was part of it, we went to the actual crash site and we actually found pieces of the cockpit plane, pieces of the plane itself, and it all tested for radiation. So there's another theory that whatever he was chasing, he got too close to, and it took off or did whatever it did, and he got caught in the backwash, and that's what made him crash.
But this thing about the radiation is what this person told your family, is it?
Well, I was there. I went to the crash
you
site.
were? Okay,
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so we went to the crash site, and we had metal detectors, and we found throughout the day, up until it got dark, we found a lot of bits and pieces of the plane, and we had a radiation detector, and it was picking up on the metal.
Wow.
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 Sí, esa es la palabra.
Sí, wow.
And also, have you had the opportunity to review documents or records related to your grandfather's incident?
I have. I've read a few of them, but again, I think the majority of them, I don't know how much stock you can put into it, just for the simple fact, I think they were told what to say. This was a huge cover-up by the government. They never did come talk to my grandmother. She found out that he had died from a neighbor that heard on the TV or radio or whatever that a plane crash happened. So there for the longest time, the family always wanted to know what happened to Tommy. I think we did get some answers again when we met with Blackwell, but I have read reports. I was on a podcast out of a gentleman from Canada last summer, and he knew everything about it. So he really went in detail, but just knowing that he was in the P-51 at the time, the P-51 was the fastest plane, and he had a full throttle going as fast as he could, and he still couldn't catch up with this. And again, at the last message was, I'm going in for a closer look, and that was it. And he wasn't a crop duster. So again, I think I always try to say this in any interview I do, is that he wasn't some guy just flying a prop plane and was joyriding and all of a sudden saw something and called his buddy and said, hey, I see a UFO, I'm chasing it, and crashed. He was a military award winning medalist, distinguished flying cross. He knew how to fly, and he was instructed to chase something, and that's what he did, and it cost his life.
Acá hay un testigo que se llama Buford Hammond, que fue el teniente segundo de su escuadrón y que dijo haber visto al objeto lanzar un rayo, ¿no? Esto lo recogieron algunos investigadores británicos. Si eso es cierto, si es así, si le comunicaron eso a la familia.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of that story. I haven't read that in any report or anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if his wingman ever even saw it. If they did, they wasn't instructed to talk about it because I've never seen reports. Again, I do know they returned to the base and that hot guns was ordered. So
the information comes from Jenny Randalls, which is a pretty respected UK investigator. And she's going to send you later some links for you to check that out if you wish.
Sí, también quería, no sé si él ha escuchado, hay un operador de radio que es una historia también muy rara, que estaba en otra base y que dice que escuchó a su abuelo decir que dentro del objeto había personas, ¿no? Porque sí, esta es una versión, que se toma, pero digamos que ese operador después se hizo contactado, por eso es una historia muy rara.
No, again, it's just like I said, I've heard reports of that. He said that he saw observation deck and that he could make out something on it, some kind of beings on it. Again, I'm not sure if that was true. I know there was reports saying, it looks like he's going, like it was almost playing a cat and mouse game with him, where he would get kind of caught up and then it would go off. And again, the military explanation was this thing was so high up that he was never going to catch it. And then again, they said that he passed out and crashed.
Ah, ok. Si está al tanto, decirle también que hay otro observador de otra base, otro militar llamado James Dusler, que dice haber visto el ovni, o sea, sería como un apoyo para lo que estaba pasando, si él está al tanto de ese testimonio.
Vale. Okay, give me just a sec, because I need to write everything you two say down, because I don't remember everything. Que voy a apuntar
James
todo,
Dusler,
porque
sí,
si no me vuelvo loca.
Sí, James Dusler.
I'm not familiar with that name.
Vale, another reference for you then.
Bueno, está bien, no hay problema. Bueno, preguntarle si después de lo ocurrido, ¿cómo fue el acercamiento de los militares? ¿Qué le dijeron a las familias? No sé si ya lo narró, ¿qué le dijeron? ¿Quién se acercó desde el punto de vista ufológico? Si Jaime en algún momento tomó contacto con ellos, bueno, y si hubo algún tipo de pedido de autopsia por parte de las familias, si el cuerpo fue recuperado.
I don't know if there was an autopsy. I know what happened was when the plane, and this was by eyewitnesses that was little kids at the time down in Franklin, Kentucky, that saw the plane come down, and they said the military came up, roped everything off. They brought in big bulldozers, and they took the plane away. Again, my grandmother Mantell, his mother, to her dying day, tried to find answers from the military, and she was always shut out. So the military, I don't think they ever came to our family and actually gave us explanation. There was reports in the newspapers. Of course, it made nationwide newspapers, but the military itself never have to this day, except when Sightings did that Quentin Blackwell interview with my family out in Oklahoma. That was the closest I ever got with the military. I will say that this past January was the 75th anniversary, and we had I spoke at this event down in Franklin, Kentucky, and he got recognized at the local, state, national level by the government. Congressional record was read on Congress's floor. The governor gave her certificate, got something from a senator. So that was nice to see him finally get recognized at that level, locally and nationally. Another yes. Interesting fact is that happened 6 months to the day of the Roswell incident.
Do you know if any UFO researchers approach your family?
UFOs, there's been a few that's like I've been in contact with a few. That Discovery Channel program, we had Nick Pope, which I'm sure Nick Pope's pretty big time. He discussed it on the show itself. Yesterday, I just filmed a movie that's coming out hopefully next spring or summer on streaming services, and they're doing a story on it. There's a guy named Dewey Edwards that wrote a book called Eye in the Sky that's very detailed, and he's actually following that up with another book dedicated to Thomas Mantell, and I believe it's going to be like 415 pages. So every detail you want to know is probably going to be in that book. So Dewey Edwards is a great researcher and great writer, so I'm looking forward to that book.
Okay, pero entonces Jaime nunca tomó contacto con ellos, ¿no? Porque él había declarado en primer lugar de que el incidente fue el resultado de una primero que era Venus, que Thomas había confundido con Venus, después que no, que era un proyecto secreto, el proyecto Science, ¿no? El de los globos que se estaban lanzando, y que después se arrepiente de todo eso, por eso le digo, y dice que había sido presionado, ¿no? A emitir esas opiniones.
No. We never received anything from anybody. You know, he was in the book Project Blue Book. I don't know if you're familiar with Project Blue Book, but it was one of the big three. It was he was considered. It was considered one of the big three UFO cases in the late 40s, early 50s. Of course, Roswell, his case, and I forgot what the other case was. It might have been something out in Washington. But he was in Project Blue Book. Thomas Mantell was, but no, we never heard. Again, we never heard. The first time we heard anything was in the late 90s, and that's when Quentin Blackwell had told us exactly what happened from the military Air Force base in Kentucky that day.
No, no me puedo creer, yo digo, ¿no? Porque se nota una posición muy dura de la ufología norteamericana con respecto al caso, porque estuve consultando a Buffon, a NICAP, y todos como que lo dan por cerrado y por una cuestión de que su fallecimiento se puede explicar, ¿no? Es muy extraño que nadie se haya acercado a la familia, me llama muchísimo la atención. También quería preguntarle a Terry si está al tanto, porque hay otra versión que dice que esa misma noche que su abuelo ya estaba fallecido, un ovni fue visto en otra de las bases y que ese ovni habría aterrizado unos minutos, ¿no? Esto me hace acordar mucho al caso del año 1976 del incidente de Teherán, ¿no? Es muy parecido también, ¿no? Involucrando una fuerza militar norteamericana con un avistamiento, digo, parecen coincidir en esos detalles. Si él está al tanto.
I heard that it was reported up in Ohio, which is northeast of Kentucky, of Louisville, and that I don't know, I haven't heard that it landed, but I knew that there was many reports in Ohio as well.
Sí, dicen que aterrizó unos segundos, ¿no? Por eso digo, y es muy, muy parecido al caso que se da después en Teherán, ¿no? Que también el ovni se dice que después de esta incursión aterrizó unos momentos en el desierto. Así que, bueno, nada, quería saber esto. Y quería, bueno, también conocer la opinión de Terry, y esto ya lo hago como una pregunta que lo hace uno de mis colegas de Argentina, que dice, ¿qué piensa si la familia de todos ustedes están de acuerdo con las declaraciones oficiales con respecto a lo que sucedió con su abuelo? ¿Qué es lo que les molesta y qué quisieran cambiar de esta situación? ¿Cómo quisieran que la historia los vuelva a tratar, el caso de Thomas? Esto lo dice Luis Anino, un argentino.
Well, for one, I think it's sad in the aspect that both of his sons are gone now. His wife's gone. My dad, of course, you know, their whole life, they always wanted to know what happened to Tommy. It was almost a rallying cry of our family. What happened to Tommy? Again, we did find some of those answers out, and Blackwell was, again, probably the best information that we got, and hopefully it gave them peace. I know my brother, or my uncle, which is my dad's brother, older brother, you know, his whole life he was sad, and he had a little bit of anger because his dad was taken away from him, and there was never anybody that came and talked to us. And for them to turn it around and make it sound like he was some flyboy maverick, doing his own thing, it's just not how the story should have played out. Now, since, again, within the last year or so, there's been a lot of stuff going on. I really have pushed it out there and tried to do whatever I can to get his story out. But him getting recognized on the local, state, national level by the government is very, it does bring some peace to the family, and for him being recognized. The end game for me, I would want for a movie to be made, because I think you'd be a national blockbuster. You'd have a love story, you'd have a World War II hero, and then you'd have the chase of whatever it was, January 7th, 1948, that cost his life.
Sí, él dijo, Terry lo leí en su entrevista que le hizo de Sun, ¿no? Que dice que su abuelo como en un momento era como Maverick de Top Gun, y después era como una especie de paria, ¿no? Pasó a ser como un tonto que se descuidó, ¿no? O como que no estaba capacitado para manejar semejante avión, ¿no? O sea, una tontería absoluta, ¿no? Con las credenciales que tenía. Y quería preguntarle a a Terry cuál es el pensamiento de él personalmente sobre lo que cree que pudo haber ocurrido con su abuelo. ¿Qué es lo que piensa él que pasó realmente?
Well, personal opinion, I've always stated that I don't know what happened. I don't know. I wasn't there. I just look at the facts, and the facts of it is this was an experienced World War II pilot that was instructed to chase something that the people at the Air Force Base did not know what it was, and they wanted him to check it out, and that he thought it was enough of a threat to put his life on the line when he was married and had 2 kids. I don't know. I would love to be able to be in that plane with him to see exactly what he saw or what he was thinking. But again, having 2 daughters myself, it had to be something very serious for him to chase it to the death.
Also, I wanted to ask you, because we know the incident changed the public perception on the UFO phenomenon. How do you think it has influenced the way UFO sightings are addressed today?
Well, I don't know if that one incident has changed the way people think, more so that as time has gone by and it's been more acceptable to talk about it, like us having this conversation right now would not have happened back in the late 40s, early 50s. If it did, and I'm sure they did have conversations about it, the public would look at it like you're crazy. So I think with it being more acceptable, more reports, more hearings at, Washington, D.C., covering these kind of topics, I think his story is very unique just for the simple fact of what he accomplished and him being the first Kentucky Air National Guard to die in flight and being the first, I believe, UFO martyr there is. So I think that's why 75 years later, we can still see it. If you Google his name, it's in different continents. I've talked to people in Chile, Ireland, Rome. I've talked to people, India, all over that are intrigued about that story still. So the story still lives and it still goes on. And it's by people like you guys that are interested and want to put the story out there. And that's why I'm real appreciative of it.
Tal cual. Bueno, eso por mi parte creo que, Terry ha contestado todo lo que sabemos del caso, ha sido muy, muy claro. Yo estoy súper agradecida de que haya aceptado estar con nosotras y compartir toda esta información, y estoy muy sigo asombrada de que la ufología no se haya ocupado lo suficiente del caso, ¿no? Estoy asombrada con eso.
Well, I have one last question, if I may. What is the message or lesson do you hope people take away from remembering your grandfather's stories and his involvement in the UFO phenomenon?
Well, there's a couple. One of them, I just want people to remember what kind of man he was. This was a guy that everybody liked. They called his nickname was Shiny because he was always smiling. He chased his dreams. He always wanted to fly. He was, again, World War II, D-Day, Germany, Distinguished Flying Cross, but more so, he was a husband, a father. The family just looked up to him. He was the golden boy. He was pretty much like whatever young guy wants to be. I'm sure when you're 22 or 23, 24, and you accomplish what he accomplished, he was a stud. He's a stud. But at the same time, he had a lot of love for America and his family. And I want people to remember that he sacrificed his life again for what he thought was a threat on American soil after surviving World War II. Again, I think it would be a great blockbuster movie. So I hope Hollywood's watching. You wouldn't have to add nothing. It's all truth. And so that's really the end game. And I would love for somebody from the military to show up and sit down and just say, okay, this is exactly what happened. Again, Blackwell was the closest thing from that did happen. But I would love to be able to hear recordings, if there was any recordings, actual recordings from the flight, the chase. And again, it's brought a lot of peace just for him being recognized the way he has already. But I think his story should always be at the top of the lips, front of the lips when someone speaks about UFOs.
O sea, nunca ha recibido lo que me está diciendo Terry, que nunca recibió algún documento, o sea, de parte del gobierno sobre lo ocurrido, es insólito. No lo puedo creer.
Nothing directly from the government. Now, I have had some, I think Dewey had found some documents. Again, I've never received anything firsthand from the government. No.
Nada de nada. We are shocked, basically.
I mean, now you can see the anger that my grandfather, my uncle, and my dad, and my grandmother, the family in whole, for until recently, it was almost like it was just swept under the rug, and it was only the people that were out there studying UFOs were really interested in it. But more and more it's accepted, and more people are jumping on board and interested in hearing about a story. And I'm glad I can explain it. I do want to add that the number one thing that kind of kept our family together was our faith in God. So we have a lot of faith as a family, and that really is the overall peace that we have as a family with such a tragedy happen to someone dying at 25.
Seguramente sí, así será, pero creo que son nuevos tiempos, digo, como bien dice, que están sucediendo muchas cosas, y yo espero que el caso de su abuelo siga activo, merece más respuestas de las que hasta ahora tenemos. Me parece que hay algunos puntos todavía que falta mucho por resolverlos, así que no pierda la esperanza y que él ha dado un paso tremendo al salir a hablar, al salir a exponerse. Sé que no es fácil, y que eso obviamente va a traer resultados, y obviamente su abuelo seguramente lo está guiando en este momento.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Pues nada, lo dejamos aquí.
Sí. Y una cosa más, a mí me gustaría, y después antes de terminar, decirle que como nosotros entrevistamos a la nieta de Kenneth Arnold, ¿no? Estaría bueno que ellos se reúnan, ¿no? O sea, estaría muy bueno que ambos se reúnan porque me parece que tienen el mismo objetivo en parte. Eso decirle nada más.
And who is this to meet with who?
To Kenneth Arnold's granddaughter, Chanel.
And who is Kenneth
Chanel?
Arnold?
It's another case, really similar. It's just the case that started modern ufology.
Okay.
Así fue decirle que el incidente de Kenneth fue el primero antes de lo que sucedió con su abuelo, ¿no? O sea, fue un año antes de lo que sucedió con su abuelo. Eso nomás.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up here. So thank you so much, Terry, for being with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Sí, agradecerle nuevamente que haya aceptado estar con nosotras, este contacto, y para toda la audiencia de Hispanoamérica, la verdad es una entrevista única. Creo que los ufólogos se van a caer de espalda cuando lo escuchen. Creo que él está haciendo historia de alguna manera con su testimonio. Así que muy feliz y muy agradecida.
And thank you for your kindness.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.